My name is Elias. I don't know if anyone is still out there listening, but if you are, this is your lifeline, your voice in the silence. The world we knew drowned beneath the flood, but our stories, our voices, they refuse to sink. I've been here, perched on this rooftop, surrounded by cracked walls and shattered memories, holding this radio close like a heart beating in the dark. It started slowly. The rivers rose, the rain wouldn't stop, and the warnings came too late for most. I remember the first night the water reached my doorstep. The cold seeped into the bones of the city, and everything familiar began to dissolve. Phones died, power flickered and vanished. The streets flooded, swallowing cars, homes, lives. And me? I grabbed my radio and I spoke. Because even when everything else fails, the voice remains. The first broadcasts were chaos. Calls for help that ended mid-sentence, static, desperate messages sent into the void. Then voices emerged. Some cracked, some steady. People reaching out from rooftops, attics, makeshift rafts. I listened. I answered. I became the thread tying scattered survivors together. Mateo's voice came through like a steady drumbeat in the storm. He organized a group near the old airport, a handful of souls fighting to survive. His broadcasts were full of grit and pragmatism, calls for others to join, to move, to never give up. "We're more than the flood," he said once. "We're the storm's answer." Sophie's voice floated in from the east side. A young woman navigating the drowned streets on a raft made from scrap wood. She spoke of her brother, clutching her side, and of nights spent floating beneath broken streetlights, the city's ruins reflected in the black water. Her courage was raw, her voice trembling but unwavering. "We'll find a way," she promised, "because that's all we have." June, the bellkeeper, used her voice differently. She was older, steadier, her broadcasts wrapped in calm determination. From the steeple of a half-submerged church, she tolled a bell each night. That sound was a beacon, a call to gather, to remember that even in this drowned city, we were still alive. Her voice carried prayers and strength, grounding us all. Omar told stories, legends, poems, words woven into blankets for the soul. His broadcasts were a refuge for children scared in dark rooms, a balm for the weary. "Listen," he said once, "to the river's song. It carries our past and our future." Together, we formed a fragile network of voices, threads of humanity stretched thin but unbroken. I relayed their stories, their warnings, their moments of hope and heartbreak. I became the chronicler of a drowned world. The flood waters destroyed everything except the will to survive. Buildings crumbled, streets disappeared beneath the waves, but from the chaos, new communities sprouted. Makeshift gardens on rooftops, patrols to keep watch against looters, kitchens feeding dozens from salvaged stores. We adapted. One night, the flood broke through the old levee. The roar was a low rumble that swallowed the city's last safe zones. Calls for help poured in, fear in every word. Mateo's voice rose above the panic. "Find high ground. Stay together. We're coming." His group risked everything to rescue those trapped by the water. Sophie's journey was a story of endurance, navigating twisted trees and debris, cold biting through her clothes, her brother's small hand never leaving hers. Her broadcasts wove fear and fierce hope into a lifeline for those listening. "We're alive," she said, "and we will keep moving." June's bell tolled on. Survivors gathered beneath the church's shadow, sharing what little they had, weaving new stories from the old world's ruins. Omar's voice was the thread binding those nights, soft and steady, reminding us we were not alone. Then came the scientist. Her broadcasts brought reason into the flood's madness. Data on water quality, warnings of disease, advice on sanitation. She was a beacon of knowledge, telling us survival was as much about understanding as it was about endurance. Military voices echoed through the static sometimes, calls for evacuation, coordination, hope. Messages flooded in from desperate survivors seeking rescue. The radio was our thread to salvation. I thought often of my brother Jonah, lost somewhere in the flood's wake. I hoped his voice would one day join ours, that he too would find the airwaves and the lifeline they offered. Every night I spoke into the microphone, knowing someone was listening in the shadows. Our voices became a beacon in the dark, a testament that even swallowed worlds still breathe. The flood waters receded slowly, leaving scars deeper than the streets, but we were not broken. We were the voices in the silence, the pulse beneath the ruins, the hope that no water could drown. As long as I speak, someone listens. As long as we share our stories, the flood can never silence us. This is Elias, still here, still broadcasting, still alive. It's been, I don't know how many days. The sun doesn't rise the same anymore. The clouds sit heavy above the city, thick and gray like old breath, and the water reflects them like a grave mirror. The calendar blew away weeks ago, and I've stopped trying to count. But I know it's been long enough that I've memorized the crackle of the radio before a new voice joins. Long enough that I've learned the names of strangers by the tremble in their words. I slept maybe 2 hours last night. Not because I wasn't tired. God, I'm always tired. But because the dreams keep dragging me back into the water. I dream of submerged homes and silent cars, of voices calling to me from under the surface. Sometimes I wake up and the radio's already hissing with someone's message. I like to think the voices pull me up before I go under. Sophie checked in again. Her raft made it farther west. She's traveling with 2 others now, Maureen and Jonas, siblings she found clinging to an overturned refrigerator near the outskirts of what used to be Franklin Street. They were sunburned and silent when she first found them. Jonas hasn't spoken yet. He just holds Sophie's hand like he's afraid she'll disappear. I don't blame him. Sophie said the water out there is different. Thicker, blacker. She thinks it's from the refinery that cracked open weeks ago, but no one's sure. It stinks like rotten metal, she said. It's poison. The fish float belly up around the rafts, and the birds don't come here anymore. Mateo confirmed that. His team tried to pass through that zone last week, ended up turning back. 2 of their people got sick. Fevers, shaking, rashes up the arms. They're quarantining now, living on the 3rd floor of a half-sunk hotel near the dry side of the airport. Mateo's been rationing supplies. He keeps his people alive with spreadsheets, checklists, short-wave radio meetings, and that stubborn voice of his. I've only ever heard him falter once. It was quiet, buried between sentences. He thought he lost a group that went scavenging across the old freeway. They were late returning, but they showed up, finally, wet, cold, one with a broken leg, but alive. Mateo doesn't believe in luck, but I could hear the way his breath caught when he said their names. June still tolls the bell every night at 8. Her voice is thinner now, weaker. She says she's fine, just tired, but I hear the strain when she speaks. The church's food stores are running low. They've resorted to eating canned cornmeal and pickled beets. Every once in a while, someone brings in a few salvaged goods, but it's not enough. Still, she keeps the church open, a place for the lost to gather, to kneel in silence, to weep and pray and remember what it means to be held. Her broadcasts are less frequent, but when they come, I stop everything to listen. "Don't let the silence convince you you're alone," she said last night. "The water took our homes, not our humanity." I got a new voice yesterday, a boy named Levi, broadcasting from a boat strung together with salvaged aluminum and plastic drums. He's maybe 16, maybe younger, and trying too hard to sound older. He speaks in clipped sentences. "Name's Levi, still here. Drifted 6 miles north. Got 2 dogs, they're good company. One growls at thunder." He ended his message with a joke, a terrible one. "What do you call a fish with no eyes?" A beat of static. "Fosh." I laughed for 5 minutes. I think I needed that more than food. We keep finding each other. Voices in the static. People I'll never meet, but somehow know better than I knew my neighbors. There's a girl who sings in the mornings, somewhere north of the university ruins. Her voice is low and bluesy, notes hanging in the air like fog. She never speaks, just sings and disappears. A man I call the librarian transmits at odd hours, reading whole chapters from soaked books he finds floating when in abandoned shops. His latest was Steinbeck. Before that, Mary Shelley. Once, he read a cookbook out loud, describing in detail how to make cherry pie, and I swear I could smell it. Omar's voice has been quiet. Too quiet. Last I heard, he was holed up in an old radio station on the other side of town. Said he was safe, had food, and was helping 2 families get settled in. But the waters around his building have risen again. If you're hearing this, Omar, check in. Say something. Anything. I tried to reach out to the military frequency again. Got nothing but static and one strange burst of automated signal. Couldn't translate it, but it didn't sound like anything human. Maybe just another broken repeater loop. Maybe something else. The nights are the hardest. There's no light except the flickering lantern I charge by crank. No sound but the slow lapping of the water against the brick below. Sometimes I hear things moving through the flood. Soft splashes, a rustle against the metal fire escape. I don't check anymore. If it wants me, it'll take me. Until then, I talk. I read out the names of the missing, the ones who called in once and never again. I repeat locations. I relay safe zones, warnings about poisoned water, crumbled structures, and to stray boats scavenging without asking first. I give directions to the church, to Mateo's post, to the radio tower someone named Flick is trying to reactivate. Flick's voice is a nervous stutter but brilliant. They've been rewiring batteries, reconfiguring antennas, trying to boost signal strength so we can reach farther. They said if the weather holds, they'll have the range doubled in a week. I don't know how they're still alive. They sleep in an electrical closet and eat cold soup. But I believe in them more than I believe in most things. I got a broadcast this morning from someone who hadn't spoken in days. Just a whisper at first. Then words. Then a story. Her name was Kay. Said she'd been alone since the 2nd week. Husband swept away in the night. Dog died 2 days later. She'd barricaded herself in a 2-story home with boarded windows and a garden on the roof. But the garden died. So did the batteries. She hadn't spoken out loud in days, not even to herself. And then she heard me, my voice. She said it sounded like her father's. I'm not that old, but I didn't correct her. She said, "I thought I was a ghost." I told her, "No, you're a lighthouse." I didn't mean to say it. It just came out. She cried. I listened. We're building something here. not buildings or roads or laws, but a network of memory and sound, a place where names matter again, where stories aren't drowned. The flood has changed. Doesn't rise as fast now, but it's deeper. It's gotten into the bones of the land. Buildings collapse without warning. A bridge went down yesterday. No one was on it, I think. I hope. There's talk of movement south, of a dry strip past the hills. Flick's tower might reach that far once it's up. If it's true, maybe there's something more than just this wreck of a city. Maybe there's ground to walk on again. Until then, I'll keep talking. My name is Elias. This is the voice of the drowned. And if you're listening, you're not alone. This is Elias, still broadcasting, still breathing, still watching the world rot in slow motion under this bruised sky. It's been quiet lately. Not the good kind of quiet, like peace or rest. The bad kind. The kind that creeps in between messages like mold. The air feels heavier. Even the static between voices seems to last a little longer. I've been listening more than I speak these days. There's something to be said for letting the airwaves fill with someone else's breath. Letting someone else be the thread between what we used to be and what we're trying to become. Levi, remember him? The boy on the barrel raft with 2 dogs finally told me his last name. Saunders. Said it like it didn't mean anything anymore. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe surnames were part of the world that got swallowed. But I still write them down in the ledger I keep next to the transmitter. 1 page for every voice. So when someone's looking later, if there is a later, they'll know we were here, that we had names, that we didn't go quietly. Levi found a rowboat. Real wood. Said he's going to try rigging a sail using plastic wrap and curtain rods. I told him he's insane. He laughed like that was the point. The dogs are still with him. He named them after old presidents, Lincoln and Truman, because they both survived assassination attempts, he said. I didn't correct him. History's bent enough already. Mateo checked in. Barely. Just a burst of transmission. His voice frayed at the edges. Something happened. I could hear it. He didn't say much, just enough to confirm he's still out there. Said they lost the south stairwell at the hotel. Water pressure cracked the concrete. They're up on the roof now, tents strung like circus cloth in the wind. He said, "We'll hold." Then the line cut out. Sophie's raft made it past the chemical zone. She picked up 2 more survivors near the rusted remains of the old Ferris wheel. A mother and her daughter. The mother's blind. Has been since birth. She navigates by sound. The daughter doesn't speak, but she sings under her breath when she's scared. Sophie said the sound keeps her sane. They've started calling their raft the Drift. Because that's what we do, Sophie said. We drift, but we don't sink. June hasn't broadcast in 3 nights. I sit by the radio long after my shift ends, waiting for her bell to toll. It doesn't. I don't want to believe she's gone. I've imagined her voice for so long that it's part of the air I breathe now. But silence is louder than anything. It presses in. Omar's voice returned. Thin, dry, a whisper more than anything. He said he got sick, fevered, dreaming in water. His building flooded up to the 3rd floor. 2 of the families he was sheltering didn't make it. He said their names. I wrote them down. I didn't ask questions. He said, I keep telling stories because it's the only way I remember what I'm doing here. The librarian read from a children's book yesterday, some story about an elephant and a lost kite. I cried. I didn't mean to. The words were simple, pure. There was something painful about hearing something so innocent in a world that's forgotten how to be gentle. Flick finished the relay tower. Boosted range by 20 miles. We're hearing new voices now. A man named Bo, transmitting from the top of an old grain silo. A woman named Nadia, trapped in a high school gym with 20 other survivors. They've got solar panels and a filtration system. They're building something. Not just a shelter, a community. She said, "We grow lettuce in buckets. It's small, but it's ours." She told me a kid named Eli painted a mural on the gym wall. A flood, yes, but also a phoenix rising above it. The kids voted to name their group the Ember. I told her that was beautiful. She said, "We needed to believe we were something more than wet ash." The world is changing. The flood hasn't gone down. In fact, it's spread further in some places. The land drinks it in, then spits it back with salt. The water isn't just water anymore. It has moods. It moves different. Some nights, it retreats just enough to give you hope. Then it swells and takes back twice what it gave. We learned not to trust it. We learned not to build too close to anything that looks dry. There was a woman who called herself Echo. She broadcast once from a cave in the hills, said she lived there alone, living off bats and moss. Her voice was strange, too clear, like she was right next to me. She told stories backwards, told me she'd seen the end of all this, said it didn't come with fire, but with silence. I haven't heard her again. A storm rolled through yesterday, wind like teeth, thunder that sounded like growling gods. I watched from my roof, the antenna shaking like it wanted to snap. I spoke the whole time. I don't remember what I said. Maybe just my name, over and over. Maybe someone heard it and knew that they weren't the only one terrified out of their mind. Kay, the woman who thought she was a ghost, broadcast again. Said she's growing herbs now. Basil, mint. She dries them on wire in the sun. She made a kind of tea. It tastes like before, she said. Then she cried. Not from sadness, just because the flavor remembered something her body forgot. I think about my brother every night. Jonah. I say his name aloud now, at the start of every transmission. In case he's listening, in case he needs a path home. Sometimes I think I see him in my dreams, on the edge of the flood, barefoot, holding a broken bike wheel, just standing there, waiting. He never speaks. But he's always looking right at me, like he hears me. I don't know if that means anything, but I wake up with his name on my tongue, like a prayer I never learned the words to. We've started forming routes. Paths between towers and rooftops, between the rafts and the floating shelters. Sophie mapped her route from the west to the drift's current position. Levi relayed his from the north. Mateo has scouts again, running low on food but heavy on knowledge. We pass the information like water, clean, shared, necessary. Some of the voices started calling it the ribbon. Not roads, not trails, but a thread connecting us, a lifeline. I read out ribbon updates every night now. Wind patterns, water shifts, areas to avoid, places where food was found or danger spotted. One woman warned of floating nests filled with snapping insects. Another marked a flooded train tunnel filled with bodies. We don't sugarcoat things anymore. Truth is all we have. People have started painting symbols on rooftops. A blue circle means safe rest. A red cross means med supplies. A yellow arrow points along the ribbon. It started without anyone planning it. It just happened. Like the water taught us new language, and we answered back in color. Last night, someone painted a green flame on the roof next to mine. I don't know what it means, not yet. But it glowed in the moonlight like something sacred. So I painted one too. This is Elias. I'm still here, still listening, still speaking. If you're out there, speak back, even a whisper, even a name. You're not alone. This is Elias. The flood doesn't sleep. Neither do I. I keep the microphone warm, keep the signal alive, because out here, silence means you're dead or worse, forgotten. I don't want to forget. I want to remember every voice, every story, every crackle and whisper from the drowned city. The water keeps rising. It's patient. It crawls into the cracks of buildings, swallows streets and parks. It turns the familiar into the unrecognizable. One day, I stood at what used to be a playground. The swings were underwater, moving like ghosts, caught in slow motion. The slide was just a shadow beneath the surface. There was no laughter, just the hollow sound of water sucking in. Voices keep coming through. Some are new, some old, some fading. The radio is a lifeline, but it's also a map of loss. Names I've come to know like family, gone. Places I've dreamed of reaching, crumbled. People trying to hold on to the threads of their humanity. Levi's voice came through last night. The boy with the dogs is still alive. He said they found a small island in the river, just a patch of dirt and scrub trees sticking out of the water like a stubborn scar. He's making it a home for now. The dogs run wild. He's built a shelter from plastic sheets and driftwood. He sounds tired, but there's a fire in his words, the kind you only get when you're desperate not to give up. Sophie's raft is moving again. The mother and daughter with her are growing stronger. They've found fresh water in an old well shaft. It's brackish, but drinkable. Sophie talks about the daughter's voice more and more. The girl sings to keep the darkness away. They call her Little Song. I asked Sophie if the song ever changes. She said, sometimes it's sad, sometimes it's hopeful, but it's always there. Mateo's group is shrinking. The hotel is barely standing. The roof is their last refuge. They're running out of medicine, and the sickness is spreading. Last I heard, Mateo lost his best scout, a woman named Lara. She was caught in a sudden rise of water near the freeway bridge. He said she fought to swim against it but couldn't. I don't know what happened to Mateo after that. His broadcasts stopped. June is gone. The bell never tolled last night. I don't know if the church still stands or if the water took it like everything else. I wanted to call her name over the airwaves, but the words caught in my throat. Omar's voice has become fragile. He says he's close to losing it, close to giving up. But he hasn't. He says that sometimes the stories keep him alive. He tells me about the children he's protecting, about the gardens they're trying to grow on rooftops, about the nights when the city feels like it's holding its breath. The librarian read a poem last week, something by Dickinson. It was about hope and despair wrapped in the same breath. I've listened to it 4 times since. It's strange how words written centuries ago can fit perfectly into the silence of a flooded city. Flick's tower is finally operational. The signal reaches farther now, but with distance comes distortion. Sometimes voices come through like echoes. Sometimes they don't come through at all, but it's a start. Beau's voice is strong. He's built a community at the grain silo. They've got solar panels, filtration systems, gardens in containers. They're calling it the Ember Outpost. He says they're planning to send scouts toward the hills, to find dry land, to find safety. Nadia's group is growing. The gym is crowded, but there's laughter. Children running between puddles inside the building, pretending the flood is just a game. She talks about hope like it's a thing you can hold in your hands. There are new voices too. A man named Victor, broadcasting from a hospital rooftop. He says the building is half submerged, but the upper floors are dry enough for now. He's a doctor. He's tending to the sick, patching wounds, keeping people alive. He sounds exhausted. A woman named Mira calls in. She's been traveling south along the old highway. She's seen the flood's edge. The water ends abruptly at the hills, like the city is swallowed, but the mountains are safe. She says there are signs of life there. Farms, animals, people. She's trying to reach the ember and the drift. The ribbon is growing. The thread connecting us all is getting stronger. We share maps, warnings, supplies. We mark rooftops with symbols, leave messages in bottles tied to floating debris. There's a sense of something new forming out of the ruins. Not just survival, but a kind of rebirth. Last night, I broadcasted a message for anyone listening. I said, "Hold on. Keep your voices alive. We are the flood's memory. We are the light beneath the water." The flood doesn't sleep. Neither do I. I'm here. I'm listening. This is Elias, still alive, still speaking. This is Elias again, coming to you from the ever-watching eye of the flood. The water has swallowed more than just the city. It has swallowed days, memories, people. Yet, I keep the mic warm and the signal alive. Because in this dark sea of silence, voices are our only lifeline. Every crackle, every whisper, every broken message is proof that someone, somewhere, is still holding on. It's been a long stretch of quiet since I last heard June's bell. I used to listen for that sound, that steady toll ringing out through the static, a beacon in the night. Now the silence where her voice once was is deafening. I don't know if the church still stands or if it was swallowed whole in the flood's relentless advance. I call her name sometimes into the void, hoping the sound might cross the miles of water and find her. But the airwaves carry back only my own echoes. Levi's voice cut through the haze this morning, ragged but alive. The boy with his dogs has reached higher ground, a forgotten farmstead nestled in a hollow between hills, where the soil still clings to dry patches of earth. He describes fences made from driftwood and rusted metal, walls built not just to keep the flood out, but to hold the wild dogs at bay. His voice carries a steadiness that wasn't there before, a newfound resolve. He spoke of planting seeds, of coaxing life from this drowned land. We're not just survivors anymore, he told me. We're builders. We're the roots of what comes next. Sophie and her raft have moved again, the currents shifting like restless ghosts beneath the surface. The chemical zone has morphed and moved, a floating poison, forcing them to leave their old shelter behind. Yet, Little Song keeps singing. Her voice a fragile thread woven through the waves, a lullaby to keep the darkness at bay. Sophie told me she started growing herbs on the raft. Basil, thyme, mint. Tiny green rebellions sprouting in plastic containers, fragile defiance against the endless gray. One day, she said, we'll have a floating garden, a place that smells like home. I told her to keep dreaming. In this world, dreams are as vital as air. Mateo's silence is the weight in my chest. No transmissions for days. I fear the worst, the sickness claiming him, or the flood swallowing what little shelter remained. I replay his last broadcast in my mind, his voice cracked, but defiant. We hold on, he said, for those who can't. his voice is gone, and the quiet left behind is a roar in the dark. Omar's voice has grown softer, yet more persistent. The rooftop gardens are thriving, despite everything. Lettuce, carrots, beans. Things that once seemed impossible in this drowned city. He speaks of children learning to read and write, the way the sun glints off the leaves, the way hope can grow from cracked concrete. His broadcasts are less frequent, but rich with stubborn light. He says, "We are the future, no matter what the flood takes." The librarian sent me a message yesterday, a reading from Rumi, a poet whose words swirl like water itself. It was about loss and renewal, about how the flood can both destroy and cleanse, and how sometimes you have to let go to find what's left beneath. I held on to those words like a life raft, even when the flood seemed endless. Flick's tower continues to reach farther into the drowned night. Bo's Ember Outpost sent an urgent call. Their filtration system is failing. Their water is turning foul. They need parts, tools, anything to keep the lifeblood clean. Nadia's gym community is bustling, planning to send runners to connect Levi's farmstead and Sophie's drift. The ribbon, this web of voices and hope and survival, is stretching across the floodwaters like fragile veins of life. Victor calls from the hospital rooftop, a lone island in a sea of ruin. He patches wounds and tends fevered bodies, fighting despair one breath at a time. Every life saved, he says, is a victory. I believe him. In a world this broken, victory is measured in moments. Mira's journey south has slowed. She's found signs of life. Abandoned farms, wildflowers reclaiming cracked fields, fox cubs darting through the tall grass. She sends pictures when the signal holds. Green hills, a sky that isn't drowned in clouds, streams running clear. The mountains might be the key, the last refuge, the edge of the flood's reach. But the flood's shadow still stretches far and wide. We lost contact with a group near the shipping docks. Their signal was a frantic warning, rising tides, shifting currents, walls of water closing in. Then silence. I fear they were swallowed whole. This city keeps shifting beneath the waves. Buildings fall, streets vanish, but new life finds a way. Algae blooms glow faintly in the dark water. Fish swim through empty subway tunnels. Birds nest in rusted street lamps. There's a strange beauty in the decay, a stubborn pulse beneath the ruin. Last night, I spoke with Lana, a woman building a boat from scrap metal and hope. She plans to sail north, past the flood's edge. She says, "We have to believe there's something waiting for us out there, a future worth fighting for." I told her I'd keep the radio open for her call. The flood doesn't sleep. Neither do I. I'm here, speaking, listening, holding the line. Because if we lose our voices, if we lose each other, then we're truly gone. This is Elias, still alive, still speaking, still hoping. The flood still rises, but so do we. Every voice is a beacon, every story a bridge across the water. The ribbon grows longer, stronger, connecting the lost, the living, the hopeful. Hold on. Hold fast. The flood might swallow cities, but it cannot drown us all. This is Elias, still here. The flood has become a relentless rhythm now, a rising tide that does not cease, an endless wave erasing everything in its path. Yet, even as the water climbs higher, swallowing the city and the past, our voices endure. We cling to the radio like a lifeline, the only thread that binds us in the great expanse of silence and water. Every broadcast, every crackle, every word is a testament to survival and hope. I sit in my shelter, a fragile perch atop a crumbling rooftop, the wind carrying the distant sounds of water lapping against ruined walls and broken streets. The city beneath the waves is a ghostly memory, buildings submerged, streets vanished, the familiar replaced by an ocean of loss. But above, where I am, the sky stretches wide and unbroken. I wonder how many others are still out there, holding on to the fragments of their lives, waiting for the radio to carry their voices home.